Then you just say, okay, that's great.
Ready?
Kind of going down in the wrong area. Anyway, that's fine. Hi everybody, welcome back. I'm Rebecca Summer. So this is Andrew Dawson, who we teach DS1 with, and Hannah Durham, who's not here today. But we taught with her last year in DS1, so we had a good thing going, and we're going to kind of build upon that this year. So there's the three of us. We've got Andy Edwards as our environment tutor, and then some new tech tutors. But the studio is about neoliberalism, social justice and verticality in the modern city. And it kind of builds off studios we've done in the past, we've been doing studios on unfinished buildings, and we were looking at the relationship between capital or dormant capital you could use in architecture, and what an architect does with it. But we're taking it a different way this year, and in part because of this, which obviously was retracted, but this idea about accessibility to the city, and I think for me what was particularly interesting, I mean this is going to be my favourite sentence, I know a lot of people that have second homes in London, and I'm so glad they do, even if they're not, if they're here only a few weeks and throw some key parties. These are amazing multiplying events. And I said, obviously, because Zaha Hadid's father was the head of the Socialist Party, he retracted all of that straight after he presented that. But I think it brings up a conundrum in architectural production, which we really want to address.
The other key point there is that this is an architectural leader, and I guess whether it's retracted or taken out of context, it is actually a reflection possibly on the direction of the preoccupation within the profession.
So in the past we've been looking at decadence. We use this in some of the unfinished studios, and its relationship with austerity or frugality, and the way an architect might work between that space. And so we're still going to kind of look at those issues. But we're looking at this idea of verticality, and it actually came out of, Andrew and I ran a workshop in Athens in April of last year, and it was on unfinished buildings because we're turning that into a kind of built project there. And there was an anthropologist, he works with artists, who came to the presentation and talked about architecture, and he pointed out that in Athens you can split the apartment buildings up in social class, so the poorer people are at the bottom, and as you go up, it just becomes wealthier. And I was thinking, well, that's such a dumb thing to say. But actually, it's so interesting, because of all the unfinished buildings, all the migrants were down the bottom. As you've got more money, you can go up. And this issue of verticality and view, and what constitutes something with value in architecture. A view out of a building, a view over a city, access to certain things, not having people bother you. And then I stumbled on this book, which I thought was very interesting. And we're going to use it as a key text, which is looking at this question of verticality and design practice. But we're also going to mix it with David Harvey, who I have quite a deep interest in, because he obviously talks about access to the city.
This book, this book's quite interesting because it not only deals with the physicality of cities, it also deals with the complexity of datascapes and the role that satellites play, drones can play in the future. So it's kind of breaking down actually where we're heading and sort of making you think about all these particular issues to do with cities. And it's quite scary when you start to read about, for example, satellites and the role that satellites play on our everyday life. And that is actually dealing with the physicality, the verticalness of how far we want to go when we go up.
We're interested in this idea of the undercroft, the intersections between spaces in a city, who's able to move through it. So there's going to be kind of a historical aspect of it as well as a contemporary one. On that, this kind of. But anyway, so last night I was looking for the most expensive penthouse in London, and Tom Cruise owns it. It's £35 million, and it's in Knightsbridge. And Andrew said to me, because we're not really interested in penthouses, but I think the question of where architects work and what we do. So this is one by Norman Foster. This is number 3, the third most expensive penthouse in London. It's 22 million, 360-degree views by Foster and Partners. So I don't know if any of you worked on any of these. I apologize if you do. 5,000 square feet. So it has 6 bedrooms, that one, which I think is quite interesting. But this is kind of what you're offered, what you've got.
There's a recent documentary that Richard Rogers has just done on the BBC. It's interesting watching that because he reaffirmed his commitment to social housing, affordable housing, solving problems within cities. And I think, again, this sort of calls into the question what the preoccupation is, especially of our architectural leaders.
Then I was thinking there was a great book that came out in the 90s called Stud, which recorded the first actual article on the penthouse, which was as a Playboy's mansion. And there's a kind of history of what these spaces are about. And I think, so there's kind of that space that we're thinking about. And the other one is about where you occupy the city, where capital can be. And I was actually looking for another project, not this one. But this is a 1.8 metre house in Tokyo. And it's just got this little sliver of available capital that you can build in, and then what you design in that. I mean, I love this top photograph. I was thinking of another one that was published in Australia, which was kind of early precedents. But the idea that you actually compress in that everything that's kind of super slick within a very small space. And these questions about what you can occupy, what you can make money on, what you do as an architect, right down to these spaces. Because we live quite close to the Cowley Road, and with the homeless centres being closed down around us, every little nook that's a little kind of space that you can occupy is taken up around us. Every little front doorway where somebody can be for a little while. This comes from a film by William Raban, who's a kind of 1970s filmmaker in London. And he made this film called The Houseless Shadow. I got him to speak here at Brooks a couple of years ago. And it retraces Charles Dickens' Night Walks, 1861, where he talks about walking around London. And he uses the exact text from Dickens to talk about what he sees at night. And he talks about where people appropriate space at night and during the day. And this is a kind of interest for us, is how cities change and they become appropriated by different people. There's a filmic part to the studio. We're going to do some workshops on views down, across, panoramas. The idea of the vista looking up, across, that kind of as a construction of, because views are capital, aren't they? They're money. And so any good view, anything that, or any bad view, so being underground, no natural light. And we're going to work at this through studying some films and looking at the viewport in which you can understand space. Interject at any time, Andrew.
You're doing great,
So then we thought about this sort of stuff, which is Madeline Brissendorf's paintings in New York, all of Delirious New York, the view out, you know, the kind of spent condom. There's just, you know, that kind of, whatever that is there. And what that drawing, well, it's painting, so incredibly beautiful. And then this one, which is about the block So we're looking at drawing exercises, well, whatever drawing might be. It could be digital, analog, blah, mix it, whatever, we go for anything. But what this space of the grid is in this modern city as well. And then I was thinking of this drawing of, you know, the kind of mode in which the verticality is expressed. Andrew was talking about Hugh Ferris drawings as well, but, you know, how an architect might engage with that. And then, so this is kind of representation, because we're interested in students exploring, a bit like RLD, how they want to work. This is an artist that I've been kind of interested in for a while. He's American, but he did this work in London of kind of positioning cardboard drawings. So it could be an in situ practice that you might choose to engage with. And I put Ed in because Ed was kind of working with film, making models. He took over the studio, but we do nurture a kind of studio culture. So that's something to know. Anything else, Andrew? The field trip.
Field trip. This year we're going to keep it simple. We're going to get on a train and go to Paris. And in the earlier stages we're going to apply the same interrogation that we do to London to Paris. And I guess we've all been to Paris, so the idea is to probably go and see Paris a little bit differently. So we're putting together a series of events and tours and things to see that we can put on the table in the beginning of the studio to build up an itinerary. So yeah, it's a train trip this time.
So yeah, because we couldn't agree, so it took us a long time. We were thinking of Dubai, but none of us wanted to go there. Then I thought of Venezuela, but that's too expensive, and I'd love to do Venezuela. Anyway, so